Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
This is the Gone to the Dogs podcast, dog talk at its finest. Your host, Steve Fielder, here. One more week has gone by, and time once again to visit with all my friends out across the coon hunting world. And I do say world because of this internet. We are reaching people all over the globe. Once again, I find myself this week doing a tribute episode. Last week, we did a tribute to Bill Wickham, a longtime friend of mine. And unfortunately, this week, I've heard the news of the passing of a true icon of our sport. This guy stood head and shoulders, literally, and figuratively above most of the coon hunters across the country. The gentleman I'm speaking of is Mr. Wimp Aron of Pontotoc, Mississippi, who recently passed at the age of 90. Mr. Aron consented to sit for an interview with me 5 years ago, and I published that interview in American Cooner magazine in the form of an article that I simply called Skuna River Treeing Walkers. It was published in the America's Choice section of American Cooner that I was writing at the time. What I'm going to do this week is actually refer to that article and share that with you. But no tribute episode would be complete for me personally without remembering the man that made it possible for me to have a career in coon hounds and be involved as I am. This episode is airing on January 29th, and that's the birthday of my dad, Holman Fielder. He was born in 1920 in Dixon County, Tennessee. And Dad, I still miss you every single day. I wanted to do the tribute to Wimp Aron because so many people knew him and appreciated him and recognized his tremendous contributions to our sport. And so, without further ado, let's get into our tribute to Wimp Aron. The Skuna River springs up in north-central Mississippi about 4 miles west of the city of Pontotoc in Pontotoc County and flows in a southwesterly direction through Chickasaw and Calhoun counties, past the sawmill town of Bruce, population 1939. Bruce is intersected by Mississippi Highways 9 and 32. Winston Wimp Aron was born on the family farm outside Pontotoc, west of the Skuna River. His Skuna River Treeing Walker kennel is well known among the nation's coonhound community and is noted for the continuous line of hounds, now 15 females long, that he has personally bred. I recently caught up with Wimp Aron at the UKC Winter Classic in nearby Batesville, and he agreed to sit for a phone interview we accomplished shortly before the deadline for American Cooner. And that interview is the essence of our visit this month. When Winston and I talked, the octogenarian coon hunter was down to hunting about 2 nights a week, he said. Mr. Aron will be 86 years old in July, keeping in mind here that he was 90 when he recently passed. Our season goes out the 1st of March, and I don't have anything young to play with this spring, he told me. I raised a litter of pups out of Skuna River Queen 14 and the big-time moonshine dog that won PKC Pup of the Year in 2012, but they're still in the pup house. It hasn't been a good winter for hunting. I try to hunt until it's down to 20 degrees, but there's a lot of water. I have some hill country to hunt, but water has been the problem everywhere. I hunt the Mississippi Delta country in the Delta National Forest, about 200 miles from here, mostly in the winter, he said. I asked Mr. Aron if he still hunts alone some, and he said, yes, about 2 nights a week. I have 3 grandsons, and they'll go with me once in a while. They have families and always have some things to do. Most people today have a way to make a living that doesn't require hard work. That's hurt coon hunting a lot. Coon hunting is hard work. I asked him about his local coon club and how it's doing. We started out here and we were having a pretty good little crowd, but it's dropped off one at a time. The older hunters don't want a competition hunt, but the younger hunters are following the UKC and PKC hunts some. At every hunt, it seems there's 1 or 2 that have other things to do. And a lot of younger hunters don't have places to hunt. I used to know numbers of people that had dogs, and now very few do, he said. Wimp Aron was born in 1933. His dad farmed and was a carpenter by trade. Wimp was a game warden, but has been retired for 30 years. Now I eat, sleep, and coon hunt, he said with a grin. When I hunt the Skuna River, I drive about 8 to 10 miles, and in winter I hunt the public land of the Chickasaw National Forest. I started out with just dogs, Mr. Aron began as I asked him about the early beginnings of the sport for him. We killed a few rabbits, a few squirrels, and caught a possum or 2, he continued. I had my first dog that would tree a coon when I was 14. He was a spotted dog, and I guess that's how I became attracted to the walkers. I caught 4 coons with him that winter by himself, and a man drove 12 to 15 miles in a wagon to breed to him because he had treed those 4 coons. I still have the right hind feet of those coons. You could say I have 4 1947 model coon feet, he said with a laugh. Everyone had hounds down here, but there were very few coons. We would hunt a week in order to tree a coon. Everyone had spotted dogs back then, so many of them were just picked up spotted dogs that were single registered, he said, describing the start of registered hounds in his area. We had no luck with the dogs we bought from breeders at that time, he said. Most breeders at that time were north of here. Most of the dogs that came from them were single registered and weren't suitable for our country. It was Cecil Wilson, who lived in Fulton, Mississippi, over by the Alabama line, that introduced the registered walkers. Cecil was responsible for single registering several dogs. The first dog I had was born in 1947, and I registered her in 1953. Cecil registered her for me. Her name was Lottie, and I bred her to a dog named Luke that Cecil had. He was one of the few registered dogs around that would tree coons. I kept a female out of her that I named Anne. In 1960 and 1961, I bought a female out of 1960 ACHA world champion Deep River Mike that I named Skuna River Gal, and a female out of 1961 ACHA world champion Stan Sailor Boy that I named Skuna River Queen 1. Anne, Gal, and Queen 1 were the 3 females that I started with, and Queen 1 was the better of the 3. Each of the females were predominantly white with black spots. Queen 1 had a lemon-colored head and 2 or 3 spots. At that time in this area, if you had a saddleback or blanketback dog, they thought it was a black and tan mixed in. They wanted spotted dogs. If you go back far enough, you'll find that popular lines of walkers like the Sackett and Wipeout dogs go back to those females several times. Wipeout Zach's mother, Zach was commonly called Moose, was a female I raised. Wipeout Candy, that Mark Sumrall raised, is another. Most of the dogs that people have put a lot of time into up and down the Alabama-Mississippi line have that in them, he said. Winston bred the Ann female to Crawford's Boss, a single registered dog of unknown ancestry. Boss was one of the nicest hounds I had bred to, Winston said. He was supposed to have some fox dog in him. I bred Ann twice to him and once to House's chief. Ann was a female that wasn't a natural. She had to be trained. Females out of her are in my pedigrees. He bred the Skuna River Gal female to Crawford's Boss as well. I used a female out of them called Skuna River Belle. Belle had a pup that won second place in the ACHA World Hunt, he remembers. Queen 1 was a white female with lemon and black spots. By Mr. Aron's description, she had a pointed muzzle and was not that great to look at. She was one of the 3 females that I started with that I used the most, he said. I bred her to House's Chief, to Sanders Frosty that was out of Hirschberger's Oklahoma Spot and Kansas Babe, and I bred her to Findlay River Buck out in Kansas. Buck was a grand pup out of Findlay River Chief and a single registered female named Belle. Herb Karstein had him. He was the sire of 1973 ACHA World Champion Bean Blossom Buck. I got Queen 2 out of the Findlay River Buck Cross, he said. Queen 2 was colored fair, but had more red than black and was rough-haired. She was a real nice little female, but the sorriest-looking queen in the bunch, he said. She had good manners, but was soft-mouthed on the tree. I was looking for volume. I hunted with Johnson's Banjo at West Point, Mississippi, and I thought he was awful loud. There was a pup off of him named Boone Creek Mike. Mike Dehoney bred his Golden Star female to Mike and got Dehoney's Cadillac. Golden Star went back to Smith's old dock. I bred Queen 2 to a litter mate to Cadillac named Dehoney's Jeff. Winston's Queen 3 female came from the cross of Queen 2 to Dehoney's Jeff. She was a nice-looking Jeff, tan on both ends and black-backed. Most of the Dehoney dogs were pretty dogs, he avowed. Queen 3 lived to be 5 years old. A combination of heartworms and the vets at Mississippi State killed her. She was one of the nicer queens I ever had, with a real carrying mouth and was loud when she came on the bush. She was a nice little hound and pretty much came that way, he remembered. Winston bred Queen 3 to Mac McAllister's Findlay River Banjo to produce his Queen 4 female. Queen 4 was a real good-looking female with a good ball mouth, something I thought was that Findlay River Banjo put some jumping at the tree into the pups. Queen 4 wanted to do that some. I had her front toenails removed, and that stopped it. I bought a younger brother to Findlay River Banjo that was a bad tree jumper. Wanting to jump the tree a little was Queen 4's worst fault. I bred her to Skuna River Handsome, a family-bred dog, and kept a male I called Skuna River Favorite. I sold him to Richard Owen, and he changed his name to Silver Dollar Favorite. He was an extremely nice young hound, he said. Skuna River Queen 5 was produced by a half-brother, half-sister cross. She was sired by Skuna River or Silver Dollar Favorite. Her mother, Queen 4, was out of Queen 3 and Finley River Banjo. Queen 5, Sire, and Dam were both out of Queen 3. Queen 5 was a decent-looking dog with a big chuckle head, Mr. Aron said. She was also probably the sorriest of all the Queen females. She was selfish. She didn't want to pack. She wanted to do her own thing. I kept her to raise pups. I pleasure hunt, and I like a dog that will pack. But she was all right to hunt with pups and was probably the best reproducer of all the Queen females. She produced the Homer's Gomer dog. I bred her the first time to House's Lipper and got my Queen 6 female. I bred her to Tree Talking Crockett and got the Skuna River Rocket and Skuna River Locket pair of dogs. I kept Locket and I let Richard Owen have Rocket. Locket is in the PKC Hall of Fame. Queen 5 was bred to Skuna River Lipper 4 times, and she was bred to 1984 UKC World Champion Hillbilly Mac. Homer's Gomer came from the Skuna River Lipper and Queen 5 cross. The Hillbilly Mac cross produced Tree Talking Jake, Tree Talking Belle, and a female I had called Skuna River Millie. Millie was a really nice female, one of the nicest I ever owned, and she placed second in the ACHA World Hunt. Queen 5 was bred to House's Lipper when Matt McAllister owned him, and the cross-produced Skuna River Queen 6. I asked Mr. Aron about hunting with House's Lipper, and he said he hunted with the famous hound several times. Mac would come down here to hunt, or I'd go up there, he said, using a phrase that I hadn't heard before in reference to training a coon dog. Mr. Aron said of Queen 5, she was a dog that made you earn it, meaning that she wasn't a natural but required some work to finish into a dog he could be proud of. I believe that many dogs today are dogs that make us earn it. The wisdom of Mr. Aron has helped so many hunters down through the years, and one only has to spend a few minutes with him to feel that this is a man that has lived the sport and is honest to a fault in his description of his dogs and their abilities. I learned that Queen 6 had a big mouth and would run a coon to death. She was a good tree dog. In his words, she had to have a little age on her and be hunted a lot to be solid. She was hunted a lot around bean fields, but could handle a coon anywhere. She was a good hound when I got her trained, if not a natural, as we would want one. In the early days, she was a little slow in the bush, but later on, she did all right. Queen 6 was bred to Skuna River Lipper, which was another half-brother, half-sister cross. From that cross, I probably got as nice a litter of pups as I ever raised, he said. Queen 7 was out of that cross, and the fat lady female was out of that litter. She appears in the pedigrees of the wipeout dogs. Pups out of that cross had big mouths. Some of them were a little bit trashy, and you had to break some of them. But they were all pretty much natural, and they were all good-looking dogs, he said. Winston bred Queen 6 one time, and she died from heat stroke at 6 years of age. Queen 7 was a nice-looking female, was blanket back with a lot of color. She had a good mouth, and in Winston's word, came here wanting to do something. She really started pretty good when she was young. She was a little bit trashy, but was a natural. She really made a nice hound. I bred her to the little Rocket dog out of the Tree Talking Crockett and Queen 5 cross. In fact, I bred her twice to Rocket. The cross produced Queen 8. Queen 8 was probably one of the better dogs I ever fed, said Mr. Aron in describing the daughter of Queen 7 and Skuna River Rocket. She was a natural. She ran no trash and could treat coons, cold coons. I could hunt pups with her when she was a year old. When she barked up a tree, she would be right there. She was a pretty female, red on both ends and black in the middle. I love the way Mr. Aron described dogs that way. She bawled and chopped on track. She would chop on a pickup or a running track and had a good change. She was a good tree dog, he said. Winston bred Queen 8 to Schooner River Lipper twice, and from the first litter came his stud dog, Schooner River Bark. He was the only pup that lived out of that first litter, Winston said. Parvo hit them, and he was the only one that lived. The Queen 9 female came out of the other litter. She was a full sister to Bark, but not a litter mate, he said. She was a little bigger than most of the Queen females. She was a good, colored, nice female, he continued. She came here treeing coons. Her fault was that she couldn't stand another dog pushing her on the tree. She was all right with good-natured dogs, but wouldn't let anything push her. A young friend of mine hunted her by herself. She was tan-headed and blanket-back, said Winston, describing his dog. I bred her to a Sackett-bred dog that was out of Sackett Jr. and a Wager stylish Lipper female. I was told that Schooner River Lipper and stylish Lipper were the two best reproducers out of House's Lipper. That's why I wanted to breed to him. Queen 10 came from the cross of Queen 9 to the Sackett-bred stud. She was a little bigger than most of them, had tan on both ends, black in the middle, and was a little houndier looking. She was a real nice female, except on a bad track, and she'd come up short. I didn't hunt her a lot because I don't want one to pull up short. She probably won more in the UKC and PKC than anything I had, but I really didn't like her, Winston told me. She had 70 pups and was probably the sorriest reproducer of all the females I had. She had a bunch of pups that would tree a coon, but there were as many of them around that I didn't like as those that I did like. Now, folks, when's the last time you heard a breeder describe a dog that he owned that way? Doesn't that give you a real good idea of the kind of person and the kind of character Mr. Aron was and was that way all his life? He continued, I bred Queen 10 to Schooner River Bark 3 times. There were some of the pups out of Bark and Queen 10 that I liked, and one of them was Queen 11. She was a blanket back, medium-sized, tan-headed, cold-nosed, hard-going little female, he said. She was a good tree dog, and I loved to leave them on an empty and be out of there under a coon, he continued. Of course, he's describing being on a competition hunt when the other dogs treed slick and his dog was out there under a coon. Early on, she was a little selfish, but later on, she packed better. She didn't mind doing it by herself, and she was also a good reproducer. I think it's interesting here how Mr. Aron now a couple times has described a dog that wanted to be alone as being selfish. Queen 11 was bred to a double Schooner River Lipper bred dog named Schooner River Rudy. He was out of Schooner River Lipper and a female named Belle. Belle was out of a mate to PKC national champion Pick Pack Pickles and a Schooner River Lipper female. Several females were bred to Ruby, said Winston, and he was a good reproducer. He belonged to the Rogers boys in Missouri. They've had bark dogs forever. Queen 12 came out of Rudy and Queen 11. By Mr. Aron's description, Queen 12 was a black-headed female, the only one colored that way in the long line of queen females. She had tan around her face and around the rear end, he said. She's still living at 12 years of age. Now, that was 5 years ago, and I'm sure she's passed by now. She's raised 40 pups out of Skuna River Repeat. Repeat is Skuna River bred on both sides and is a brother to Lockbox and several other dogs that are around, said Aron. Queen 12 was a smart hound, easily trained, not trashy, but she lacked just an ounce of desire when she was young. What she did right was always, and was a good tree dog. What I should have said there is that, what she did right, and she was a good tree dog. She was no trouble and handled good. Sometimes you'd have to tell her to get it in there, he said. She was a good brood female. Mr. Aron's honesty was just amazing. When you sit in the presence of a man like that, and you think about how many times have you sat and talked to somebody about their dogs, and it was all I, me. I used to laughingly say the dog would walk on water and talk on TV. That was not Mr. Aron. He was straight up the truth every time. Let's continue. Skuna River Repeat was out of Hub's Homer, the sire of the popular backwater bone collector. On Repeat's mother's side, he had a cross of Skuna River Lipper and Skuna River Locket, Winston said. There was also a cross of Queen 6 and Tree Talking Crockett. Jarvis Humphers had Hub's Homer, and when Homer was old, he let Keith Medley have him, and he bred him. Homer may become the all-time top reproducer. He was an ugly hound, but I never saw a pup out of him that was ugly as he was. There again, folks, that honesty. Queen 12 was bred to Skuna River Repeat to produce Queen 13. Queen 13 was run over when she was about 5.5 years old, Winston said. She was a good female with a lot of mouth and want to. She was one of the first I had that was kind of a professional at striking out the back of the truck. My legs were worn out, and she was the first I used that way, and she was really good at it, he said. She was a nice-looking female, blanket-backed and tan on both ends. There were 9 pups in her litter, and they were all good. Several of them were titled, he said. This day and time, it's hard for all of them to have a chance, he lamented. I started several of them to see what they were like. I bred Queen 13 to Skuna River Gunner. He was out of Skuna River Bark and a gyp named Skuna River Bell. It went back to the Skuna River dogs with a shot of Rat Attack. The cross of Queen 13 to Skuna River Gunner produced Queen 14. Queen 14 is 5 years old at the time of this writing. Now, folks, again, that was about 5 years ago. Mr. Aron has 11 pups, or he had at that time, out of her in Big Time Moonshine, owned by Mike Tall and Rick Solfin in Missouri. He was sired by Backwater Zed and out of Queen 6. He won the PKC pup race in 2012. In Mr. Aron's words, Queen 14 is colored about like you would draw one, he continued. She's a good, medium-sized female that strikes from the back of the truck. It's unbelievable how far she can strike from the truck. Just for me, she is as nice as I've had. Now, Mr. Aron's goal was to produce 15 of the queen females and says this may be the last of the line. Queen 15 is out of the first litter of Big Time Moonshine and Queen 14. He's raised 3 litters from that cross. Queen 15 is now 2 years old. Now, I'm not sure if she's still living or not, but if she were, it would make her about 7 years old now. Mr. Aron describes her this way: Queen 15 is pretty much a natural. She has an odd mouth. She screams and hollers. I like it because with my hearing, she really makes a lot of noise. She goes on the tree with a loud, screaming mouth. She's never run any trash, and right now she's my better dog until Queen 14 gets over the puppies. Queen 15 hasn't been bred, and I don't know that I'll breed her. 15 was sort of my goal. I might find something down the road that I'll want to breed to. I may want to do a partial outcross. The most I went outside this bloodline was when I got Queen 10. A lot of folks liked her. I didn't especially. I thought the outcross hurt her reproducing, he said. When questioned about how long he plans to continue along the Skuna River path of breeding better treeing walker dogs, Mr. Walker. When questioned about how long he plans to continue along the Skuna River path of breeding better treeing walker dogs, Mr. Aron said, I'd like to have another dog when I think about it, but really, I have all I need. I'll be lucky if I wear these out. With all the talk about his females, I wanted to know about the stud dogs he's had over the years. I really only had 2 stud dogs, Skuna River Lipper and Skuna River Bark, he said. Skuna River Bark had around 1,400 pups, and Lipper had about half that many. On Lipper's mother, Night Champion Incredible Dixie's side, he continued, he had the first 3 gyps that I had and a shot of Boone Creek Mike. Skuna River Lipper had an incredible amount of want to. He would not quit. He was gritty and had no backup. His fault was that he stood on the tree and he would tie up if something tried to push him off the tree. He was good-natured with good-natured dogs. He had lots of go. He really put the tree in his pups. They'd be doing something by 9 months old. I bred Queen 5 to House's Lipper and to Skuna River Lipper. The Skuna River Lipper pups came here doing it. The House's Lipper pups, you had to kind of earn it with them. Mr. Aron raised Skuna River Bark, and he also raised Silver Dollar Favorite. Sired by Skuna River Lipper, and out of Queen 8, Skuna River Bark produced 1,400 pups. He was the best male hound I ever turned loose, he said. He was a 52-pound hound with a big mouth that could really run a coon. He was a nice tree dog and had no trouble anywhere, just like his mother. He was one of the best disciplined hounds, and he did pretty good in the stud pen. I asked Mr. Aron if he could name an all-time favorite hound, and he said that he couldn't. He did say that Queen 14 female suits him really well. She hunts from the truck, is a winding tree dog, and minds well. He said when she trees too far away, he just tones her, and here she comes. At my age, hunting these Florida swamps, I can relate to the benefits of the tone button when trying to recover a hound that's gone into a challenging place. Mr. Aron did say he liked Bark, Bark's mother, Queen 8, Queen 7, Queen 3, Queen 1, and Queen 8. I lost Queen 8 as a 3-year-old, he said. As for hunting at age 85, Mr. Aron admitted that his legs weren't what they used to be. And for his shooting, he says, it takes a while. I put a laser light on the rifle and that helps, but sometimes the laser won't stay still. As I think of Mr. Aron, who's now passed, very sad for me because I enjoyed talking to him so much. I think about him still actively hunting at 85 years old, and even was up until the age of 90, I believe, was still going to the woods with the dogs. And I think about these things about how shooting becomes a challenge and all the other things that he talked about. But man, he was tough. Mr. Winston Wimp Aron is, or should be, an inspiration to all that aspire to continue hunting after the years have taken their toll. His determination to breed the same line of dogs, reaching outside the line when necessary, has made the sport of coon hunting more enjoyable for more than one generation of coon hunters. As I wrote this article, I said I'm hoping he'll be around hunting and breeding the Skuna River treeing walkers for many years to come. And that turned out to be 5 years. I closed with this. He is a true Southern gentleman with whom I immensely enjoyed spending time. I'm sure anyone that met Wimp Aron, former game warden, knew that they'd been in the presence of a great man, a good man, a man that enjoyed life and enjoyed being around people. He made an indelible mark on our sport with his Skuna River dogs, and he made a lasting impression on all that met him. Rest in peace, Wimp. We'll see you on the other side. Well, folks, I took the opportunity to contact a couple of people here tonight to continue our tribute to Mr. Wimp Aron. And these guys probably know Wimp as well as anybody, maybe better than most. And they have just returned from Mr. Aron's funeral that was held today. And I know it's an emotional time for them as for anybody who knew Mr. Aron. And we'll just call him Wimp as we go forward because I know that's what he'd want us to call him. But I wanted to bring to the microphone a longtime friend of mine from Laurel, Mississippi, Mark Sumrall. How are you, Mark?
Good, Steve. How are
I'm
you?
doing good. It's good to see your face again. I haven't talked to you face to face in quite a while, but I know we've known each other for a long time. I know when I went to PKC, you were one of the people that I talked to quite a bit. Do you remember when we met?
Oh, I know it's been 20 plus years.
Yeah, it's been a while. And the other gentleman is Ricky Campbell from Tupelo, Mississippi. How are you, Ricky?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing very well, very well. And I'm just very grateful that you fellows took the time on this special and I'm sure difficult day to talk to us, my listeners, about Mr. Aron. Just by way of a little background here, Mark, how long have you been following these old hounds around?
Oh, I've been hunting since I was about 12. I'm 55 now. Started hunting with Mr. Wimp about 1985, I think.
Wow.
When I first met him, started coming hunting with him.
Yeah, 83 was the year I went to work for UKC full time. So I'm thinking back, that's quite a long time. Yeah. So did you grow up hunting at home, or was your first experience hunting with Wimp?
Oh, I grew up hunting with a neighbor. Got me started hunting and just went from there. When I was probably 11 or 12 years old, started hunting.
I gotcha. Well, Laurel, Mississippi is a pretty famous town if you follow cable TV and so forth. We were talking earlier about what is that called? Our Town or the show?
Hometown.
Laurel,
hometown.
Mississippi. Ben and Aaron, those of you listeners out there that are like my
It's
wife.
made us famous.
Pardon?
Made us
Made you
famous.
famous. That's right. They've remodeled the whole town of Laurel, haven't they?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a great show. I enjoy it. Well, you brought along your buddy Ricky Campbell here from Tupelo. There's a familiar name for all you Elvis Presley fans out there. Ricky, how long have you been following hounds?
Oh, well, I don't remember much of my life where we didn't have hounds at my house, but coon hunting, I was like Mark. I probably started coon hunting about 12 years old. Mr. Wimp was our game warden here in Pontotoc County. I live in Pontotoc County, even though I've got a Tupelo address. So he hunted with a lot of the older guys that lived around our community. And that's kind of how I got started. And
I see.
Just my granddad was a coon hunter.
Your granddad was? Oh,
yes, sir.
Cool. Yeah.
Leroy Campbell was his name. He won the first ACHA.
Oh man, I remember that name. That's a historic name for sure.
So he knew Mr. Wimp, and they kind of tied me together there with Mr. Wimp too. So
yeah. Well, it was Mark, I think, more than anything that spoke so often about Wimp, and Mr. Aron was 90 years old, I believe, when he passed. Is that right?
Yes.
And when I interviewed him for the magazine article, he was 85. And man, I tell you, I'm getting there. I'm 77. So Mark, I'm 22 years older than you are, brother. How old are you, Ricky?
I'm 60.
60. Just a pup. Just a pup. Well, in this tribute to Mr. Aron, I've talked about his dogs and all the queens that he had down through the years. Do either of you know how he came? Was it just based that he liked that Queen one the best out of? He told me there were 3 dogs there, and he liked Queen the best. Was that just the reason he stuck with the Queen name? Do either of you know that? Do you, Mark?
Had to be. I'm sure. I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
That's what got it started.
And
I think she was his favorite. He had another one, I think, named Gal too, didn't he, Mark? Gal was about.
That's right.
And I think the Queen Jip showed him more of what he was looking for in a walker dog to tree a coon. Yeah. That's what he had told me.
Well, he told me in the article about, the walker dogs that came down, first of all, they weren't, really what people were looking for. And he, I don't think they were too pleased with them to start with. But, he said if you had a a blanket back dog back in the day, people thought it had black and tan mixed into it. So they preferred a spotted dog more back in those days. Did he ever tell you boys that?
I've heard that.
Yeah. Well, he was such an interesting guy to talk to. I want to ask each of you how you met. Mark, I'll go first with you. How did you meet Wimp Aron?
I was hunting a male dog, hunting a Strong River bark dog for Mr. Buddy Jones. And Wimp was going to breed one of his females to him. And I had him at my house. So I drove and met him at Buddy Jones's house to breed that female. It's the first time I met him.
I see.
I think I was about a senior in high school and drove up there in middle of the summer and wasn't supposed to be killing coons and had coons in the back of the truck and pulled up there and there was the game. Scared me to death.
Oh, I bet you. Sweating bullets, weren't you? There's been a few coon hunting game wardens around, and that Bert McAfee that used to be with the ACHA organization all night, he worked for the game department somehow. Did either one of you know him?
I didn't.
Now, I bet your dad did, Ricky.
Probably did.
Yeah. And I think of others. There's Randy Rhodes, I believe it is, over around DeWitt, Arkansas there. He's a coon hunter.
Right.
And, boy, I tell you, we had one named Dan Farley back in West Virginia. Now, he wasn't a coon hunter, but he'd beat you to the tree. A lot of times you'd be at the tree shining, look around, and he'd say, "You see them yet, boys?" You're like, "Where'd that come from?" He'd be standing over there in the dark somewhere. He got to the dogs before we did. Oh my! Well, okay. So, did you go hunting with Mr. Wimp that night, Mark, or?
I did not that night, but he invited me up, and soon after I went to his house and been going
I
ever
see.
since then.
I knew that you were very close to him, and you've been good to send me messages and stuff. And you said something in a message that you sent to me that really kind of it touched me. And I'm not going to try to quote it verbatim. Verbatim. I got my tooth wrapped around my tongue wrapped around my eye tooth there, I think. But anyway, you said that Wimp had read virtually everything that I'd written in the magazine, and I took that as a very, very high compliment. You really made my day with that one. And but we had such a nice talk when I was doing the article, and when I'm talked to him for quite a long time at Batesville. The last time I saw him. And but okay, Ricky, what's your first experience with Wimp?
My mom and dad was going to find me a dog that would tree. We had running dogs. We had beagles here that we rabbit hunted with, and I wanted something that would tree, and
yeah.
Well, my dad, he knew Mr. Wimp, so he contacted Mr. Wimp. And I remember I was 12 years old, and I seen the truck pull up my driveway, and he got a little walker dog out of the back, a little female. And that was my start with Skuna River walker dogs at 12 years old. And from then, it was just every opportunity I had a chance to get to go hunt with Mr. Wimp, I took it. And
oh, yeah.
That was been 1975. So...
Now, was he already well known in the coonhound world at that time, or was he more locally owned, do you think?
Well, I know, I didn't know really about the bigger scope of the coon hunting world at that time, being 12 years old, but I remember everybody around here, if they had a coon or coon dog issue or question, it went to Mr. Wimp. It always reverted back to Mr. Wimp and his dogs.
He was the authority.
He was the authority.
Well, it wasn't until I went to PKC in about 1998 that I really began to hear about Wimp and about the Skuna River dogs. I'd been with UKC all the way back to 1978 when I became a field rep, and living in Michigan all those years and all, I just really didn't know too many, besides the people that put on the hunts for us down there in that part of the world. But I didn't know these people, and I would hear guys like Eddie Simmons talk about him and, and different ones, Roger Dale, of course, and all the people in that general area just had this very, very deep reverence for Wimp Aron. And, I looked forward to the time that I could sit down, and really talk with him. And I sure wasn't disappointed when I did. But so that was, you kind of got your start then, Ricky, with in coon hunting with one of Mr. Wimp's dogs.
Yes, sir. And that's all.
Awesome.
As far as coon dogs, that's all I've ever owned here was Skuna River dogs.
Mm-hmm. I remember other guys from down that part of the country, and I don't hear too much from him now. No, Benny Taylor still hunting.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Does he hunt Skuna River dogs?
I think he's got. What he does, don't he, Mark? Don't Benny have?
I know some of them have had some of it in them. Now.
Yeah,
I know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know where to go exactly with this. I feel such a reverence for this day because it means so much, I'm sure. Let me ask you this about what family did Mr. Aron have? What does that he left behind? Was his wife living or?
No, Miss Shelby died a few years back, and his son died a couple of years ago, Gary, and he had a daughter, Kathy. is still alive, and he had 3 grandsons, a granddaughter. Ain't that wrong? I get confused. I think that's right, Mark.
Yeah. Well,
3
I
or
don't
4
want to get you
grandsons,
boys in
granddaughter.
trouble with the family here, but well, uh, he was just such a soft-spoken gentleman. He, from my view, he never tried to play that role of being an authority on coon dogs, did he?
No, sir, not that I know. I never noticed him to be that. He downplayed it more than anything.
Yeah, that's what I got from my conversations with him too. Uh, he just he knew that he knew, and you knew that he knew when you talked to him. But so he didn't have to, play the big ego or anything like that. Well, what was it like to go hunting with Wimp? I saw a video. Maybe one of you guys posted it. I don't know, just the other day, showing him at a tree, and I think he was probably 90 years old already at that tree.
Yeah.
And he was
I recorded that
who
video.
you
I
did?
recorded it. I think that was a couple of years ago, maybe,
Okay.
or a year ago or
Well, I
so.
liked the way he reached down and kind of petted the dog a little bit, and all. What was it like to hunt with him? Either one of you.
Oh, it was a sight to just watch him. The dogs always minded real well. His dogs always paid attention to him, and he paid attention to the dogs. And when he would get to a tree, it was more what the dogs was doing. Was they behaving right? Was their habits right? And before looking for the coon, it was more about his dogs.
Yeah, I've seen him go to many a tree and never look up the tree. That really wasn't that important with a puppy, especially. It wasn't, he worked on a dog. Anybody else want to look up the tree, that was fine. But with a young dog, I've seen him, the Skuna dog we got now, I've seen him just place his feet on the tree in certain places and then not let him move left or right, make him stay
Make
in
him
one
just
spot
stay right there.
for the whole time. Never let him take it. Yeah, he was constantly working on the dog.
You bring a lot of memories back to me by saying this and describing this. Earlier on in this podcast, I mentioned that it's going to air on January 29th, and that's my dad's birthday. Now, my dad was born in 1920, so he was a good bit older than Wimp, but he was exactly that way. He did. Sometimes we'd go into a tree. He'd never look up the tree. He was always paying attention to the dogs, what the dogs were doing, and I'd say, Dad, you want to look at this coon? Oh, I know he's up there or something like that, he'd say. I don't know if that's an old school thing or that was the way guys grew up, but you can tell, I have right here on my wall, there is a display box with a glass front on it. It's walnut. My brother had it made for me, and inside that box is my dad's old calling horn, the horn that he used to use to call the dogs in back before any tracking collars or anything were even thought of. And he had a brass plate put on that said H.E. Fielder, the houndsman. And he gave me that for Christmas, and it's priceless. It's got the raw kind of leather latigo strap that my dad made to put around it and all. But those fellas like Wimp and my dad and many more of them of that generation really were houndsmen. They had a lot of dog knowledge. Why do you think that was? Was it just that they took more time, you think?
I think a lot of the older guys had more pride in what the dogs did, their ability. And mister
Mhm.
Wimp, he was constantly trying to build on the ability and the brains in a dog. His big thing was its brains. It's got to be smart, and that's one
Yeah.
thing he really stressed over the years, especially the last 10 or 12 years. He said, we got to try to put a lot more brain in these dogs. And
Yeah.
the smarter the dog is, the easier are they trained all the way around.
What do you think about that, Mark?
Yeah, he. I don't know. When he got to a tree, it's just so much about. He didn't put up with any bad tree habits, and it was all about making sure the dog is, acting right, and
Yeah.
it just, it's a lot more about the dog,
Yeah.
the individual dog.
Well, I've said this before on my podcast that I used to have a lot of company come to hunt with me in Michigan. And when you get several guys coming, and you're out there in the woods, everybody wants to be visiting and talking and all that stuff. And it's just ingrained in me. I always wanted to slip out there. And I knew they thought I was, being unsociable or whatever. But I try to slip out there away from the crowd if I could listen to the dogs. I've always just loved to listen to the hounds, And I kid a lot of these newer hunters today with their Garmins and all that they spend all their time in that little screen, and they're not even hearing what the dogs are doing. But
Right.
what did Mr. Aron think about all this technology that we've got now? Did he take to it, or did he dislike it, or what?
He fought that Garmin for a while.
He did.
He didn't want that for a while, but then after he got one, he really depended on it and liked it. Could tell what the dog was doing and if they was barking, and he liked it after a while.
He worked a dog. He had a young dog he was working just this past year, and I told my son hunts with us too. I told him, I said, "You watch when we get to the tree." And Mr. Wimp was in the truck, and he was watching the dog on the handheld. I knew what he was doing. I said, if that dog's off the tree, it won't be off the tree, but just a minute, it'll be back on the tree. And we got there, and sure enough, the dog just milled off just a little bit, but far enough from the tree that it showed it on the garment. And directly, you see the dog just run back to the tree. I never had to say anything to it. It went back to the tree and got back on the tree.
Wimp sent him a message, didn't he?
My son said, Mr. Wimp just sent that dog a text, didn't he?
That's right. He sent a text message. Get back on that tree, brother. I see what you're doing. Oh, that's great. That's great. Do you either of you have a memory of hunting with him that kind of sticks out a little bit, or maybe something funny or something he told you or something he did or anything? I see you smiling, Mark. You must have something.
There's lots of stories. My favorite times was, maybe not the hunting is, after we come in from hunting, we might go to the huddle house or something, but the talks afterwards just stand out to me that, he talked a lot about, he didn't want this dogs to stop, when something happened to him, especially later in life. He'd have a lot of talks, about when he was gone. He didn't want it to end, and the importance of keeping the young people hunting, just a lot of them talks meant a lot to me,
Yeah.
Maybe more than the hunting stories and all.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, what an opportunity you both have had to be able to use the expression, sit at the feet of a master, really, a master coon hunter, a guy that was not only loved the sport, loved the dogs, but he was a planner. He was all, as you say, always looking to the future. How can I improve? How can I make things better? I'm sure he was proud of the Skuna River brand, though, wasn't he?
Yes.
You think so?
Yes, very proud.
Yeah.
He had a lot of pride in it.
Yeah. Well, and he deserved that, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
he sure
sir.
did. Do you have a favorite memory or story or anything about him, Ricky?
I've got so many that are funny. I mean, it's
oh
funny.
Yeah, well, that's
Since
what
Mark
we
told
wanted.
the reality side of him there, I'll tell a funny story. We were hunting one time on the Big Black River, and I had a dog that occasionally he'd tree a possum. And this had been 15, 20 years ago, and it was a leopard dog. And he had treed a possum. He had treed a layup. One of Mr. Wimp's, I think it was Queen 7 came by, the dog he called 7. She wouldn't even get close to it. But when she came by, he swatted at her with a switch and told her to get out of there.
Yeah.
And we were in Montgomery County, And when we found her tree 2 hours later, that's when we had the old beep collars. We didn't have the garments, but she had done went all the way into Webster County. She left there. She got away from that possum in a hurry. So the dogs respected it.
Rick,
Hey,
We're here. We've lost Mark's picture,
I lost y'all.
but we can hear you, Mark. The
We
picture
can
may
hear you.
come back, but
I lost you somehow. There.
we'll. Okay, let me get a time stamp on that. Okay,
There
you're coming back.
Okay.
There you
He's
go.
back. He's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's coming back.
So on that
I
hunt,
touched the wrong button.
So anyway, just the fact that he swung a switch at her put her in the next county.
yeah, put her in the next county. The dogs had that much respect for him, you know.
Oh yeah.
That she knew she shouldn't have been around the possum, so she left. He got all the way out of there, changed counties on us. So that was kind of a funny thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We had some other people hunt with us. Said, whatever Mr. Wimp does, don't let him point his finger at that dog again. It's time to go home.
Sure. Well, I guess that'd be pretty handy the way these guys like these go yonder deep and lonely dogs nowadays. All you'd have to do is carry a switch with you, and swing it. Put them in the next zip code, I guess. Yeah. Well, I know you fellas have just tons and tons of memories of Mr. Aron. And you told me, Ricky, I believe it was you, before we started recording, that he had gotten up to Queen 17 now.
Yes, sir. We're
Okay.
Queen 17.
Now, do you recall how she's bred? I mean, of course, she's down from the line of queens, but what was she out of, male dog?
She's out of Skuna River, Skuna, which is the dog that me and Mark and Mr. Wimp had that we were breeding a lot to this past couple of years, and out of the Queen 16 Jip that he calls her Bama.
Bama.
And we really, it seems like it's doing good. Skuna's putting a lot of good early starting pups on the ground for us right now. So
well, that's great. That's great.
We like him. Mr. Wimp liked him a lot.
Well, there's an endorsement. You can
hang
your hat on, can't you? Well, did you see? Well, how many years back are we talking for each of you, knowing Mr. Wimp? Do you have an idea?
Hey, I told you something wrong right there, Steve. The Skuna dog was out. Well, you asked me about 17.
He's out of Queen 14.
Yeah, 14.
Yeah,
You asked me about 17.
17. I'm sorry. Yes.
That's right. Yeah, she was out of 16 in Skuna.
I got you. Well, going back all those years that each of you have with the Skuna River dogs, did you see a common thread in all those dogs down through the years? Is there something that you could kind of look at and say, that's a Skuna River trait in those dogs? Or were they just each individual good dogs? And I just wondered about that.
I think you see a lot of the same traits. From when I came into it, the dogs were always smart, easy to train, and usually really good mouths.
Oh yeah.
But the brain is been there and got better. I think it's always been there.
Right.
He worked on that a lot. He wanted them to be smart, naturally smart.
Well, having been around this game a long time, and I was privileged to get to hunt with an awful lot of good dogs down through the years. Not just my dogs, but other dogs that are well known and all. But that intelligence has always been the number one trait. I think if you talk to any houndsman that's been at it very long, they're going to tell you the first thing they require in a dog is that they have those brains, as you call them, and that's all the good dogs that I remember in my experience were smart dogs. They they had a handle on them. My lifetime dog was a plot dog called Bronco, and Bronco had what I called coon sense. And really, he was a dog that you could just about do anything with. I think it was like Old Yeller. I hunted him on bear and coon. But he just seemed to know which way a track was going, and he didn't fool around standing on his head. His idea was to get that coon tree, get up under it. And I've seen him in Michigan cornfields a lot of times just go into a cornfield and strike Well, he wouldn't open his mouth sometimes till he's all the way on the other side of that cornfield. And you'd hear him open again when he hit the woods, and boom, he was treed. You know, he was smart. He knew which way that coon was going, you know. And that's intelligence, and you can see it, as you boys know, in puppies. You can see it from the time they're very young, you know. Some of them, they're just the lights on, but nobody's home, you know.
That's right.
But well, Mr. Aron knew that for sure. And I have to guard against the fact that just because I'm old, of saying, well, things were this way or that way back in the day, because I know I've had my time at this sport. Now it's you younger fellas' time. And I told somebody recently, I'm a cheerleader now. That's what I do. I cheerlead for all you guys out there that are still hunting. I want you to see, I want to see you do it for as long as you can. And I still enjoy doing it, but I just do it at a whole lot slower level than I used to. You went to Mr. Aron's funeral service today, right?
Yes.
Was that held in Pontotoc or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it was.
And at a church or at a funeral home there?
It was held in the chapel at the Tudor Memorial Funeral Home.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, Ricky, you were telling me earlier that it seemed to be a lot of hunters there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It was a lot. I wish we'd have had a number of hunters, you know, overall.
Yeah.
How many people was there, just so many hunters. But everywhere I looked, you know, I was pretty well looking at somebody that was either a hunter or associated with hunting in some fashion, or had hunted with Mr. Wimp. Even in the community, there's so many people around Pontotoc that had actually just went hunting with Mr. Wimp just to be able to say, you know, I hunted with Mr. Wimp Aron in my lifetime.
Yeah.
So,
what did you take away from the funeral today, Mark?
Yeah, it was such respect for him, you know. Had people drove. I know there was Mr. Dennis Montgomery from Missouri came. Lots of guys from Alabama, Tennessee.
Oh, that's
you know
wonderful.
that were just genuine friends and drove that far out of respect. I think was about 6 or 8 from my county, and we're 3.5 hours from here. 6 or 8 people from down my way drove up, and you know, just a lot of respect.
Well, that's the perfect word, you know, that fits Aron. Mr. Aron, he didn't demand it, but he commanded respect. Just the way he carried himself, the way he spoke to you, the way, you know, he showed respect to everybody else. And I'm sure that just came back, you know, multiplied to him. Well, I'm very glad to hear that. I would have loved to have been there myself. And, you know, I didn't really know Wimp on a real personal level, you know, just mainly through the dogs and kind of professionally, you'd say. But we just seemed to get along really well when I talked, the times that I talked to him. And there's an appointment that we all have to make. Nobody gets out of this alive. And our pastor at church says this at times, you know, 100% of us in this room, as he would say, are going to die. And it's so important that we leave a legacy, I think. I mean, we can leave all kinds of legacies. Some are good and some are bad. But he sure left one that's going to be hard for anybody to fill. What would you say is you will remember down through the years, Ricky, one thing you'll remember most about Wimp Aron?
His honesty, his truthfulness, his ability to talk to people at all levels. He treated everybody with the same respect. And his passion for, you know, the dogs, that's something I'll always remember. And his willingness to take time with kids, to try to get kids engaged in the sport. He really wanted everybody to know what coon hunting was. He told me one time, he said, I want all my kids and grandkids to go coon hunting. And if they never do it again, they'll at least, if they're sitting in their house some night and they see a light coming through the woods, they're going to think, hey, that's a coon hunter,
Yeah.
And not be scared of the fact that there's people that coon hunt, because it's kind of a dying sport, I'm afraid. There's so many people that we don't see the recruitment of young folks that we did back when I was a kid. All the kids.
Oh, yeah, sure.
In.
Well, he had vision.
He had vision.
Yeah, he really did. Something that he loved so much. He told me, when I did the article, he said, all I do now is eat, sleep, and coon hunt. He was talking about, and that was his life. Oh, when I listened to the podcast on Coon Hunting University, Mark, and you were involved in that, talked a lot about Mr. Aron's, I don't know if it was his he shed, his den, did he have a separate building there at his home, or was it part of his home, or what was that all about? I heard all about all the Tyler Duncan was talking about all the old magazines that he had and all. What about all that?
We call it the bunkhouse, but it's he had a place for company to spend the night if they came, and he's got every magazine from the 60s to current.
Mm-hmm.
American Cooner, Coonhound Bloodline, Spruehound, Full Cry, all of them. They're all organized real well, every issue.
Now,
and he has a lot of American Cooners from the very first copy.
Wow.
The way on back in the 40s.
Yeah. Well, did he have any of the old mountain musics, the green ones that were they were kind of the forerunner of the American Cooner, I think.
Yeah, I know there's some.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, now, is somebody going to continue to keep those things? Is that you guys or somebody in the family, or that's such a treasure that,
Yes. Justin, his grandson, he left the place to him.
I see.
He said he's going to keep the shed and all just like it was.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Save all that stuff. And it's a lot of history in there,
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. I think it was 1947. He killed 4 coons, hunted all year, caught 4 coons. And he's got 1 foot off each 4 of them coons still in that shed. Just so much history in there.
He told me, he said he was the only one that had those 1947 coons, 4 coons. He said a guy came. How far did he come in a wagon to breed a female? It was a long
ways. I've heard that story.
Like 15 miles, because that dog had treed 4 coons come to breed a chick.
And when he said in a wagon, that struck another nerve with me. My dad was born in Dixon County, Tennessee, which is just west of Nashville, out on a little 80-acre farm. And my grandfather had been a railroader, but he was legally blind. He had glaucoma in his eyesight. He could make out shapes, but he really couldn't see to drive. On Saturday morning, he'd hitch up a team of mules to a wagon and drive 8 miles to town and do his business or shopping or whatever he needed to do and drive back. And when he talked about that guy bringing the dog in the wagon, to come over there, I believe he said to breed to him.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It's a different world for sure. But, man, what history. That is a treasure to me. It really is. And I'm hoping someday there'll be a stop on the highway and it says Wimp Aron Memorial Country Store and whatever, that there'll be some way that his memory will be perpetuated, for down through the years. Do you have a favorite?
He definitely.
Go ahead, Mark.
He definitely left the impact on a lot of people. It wasn't just us, it's lots of people.
Well,
he touched.
I don't think Wimp would be happy with us if we had this discussion, didn't talk about his dogs and the dogs that you boys got now and what you have and what you're doing with them and what your plans are for them and all that. What What's going on with these Skuna River dogs going forward?
Well, he left us. Me and Ricky and I have Queen 15, 16, and 17. And he just, lots of talks and left lots of instructions of he didn't want it to quit there. Don't let it end there. Keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
And, he gave his suggestions, but he didn't say, breed this one to that or this one to, he had lots of ideas, but, he left his thoughts of, I know I spent lots of time, Ricky, I'm sure too, listening to, but it was just the most important part was don't let it die. Don't let the queen stop here, and be sure to keep the kids involved.
That was it. That was it in a nutshell. He said, just keep it going, And like Mark said, no specific instructions. And I'd try to pick him, and say, well, look, what would we need to breed this dog back to? And this, he would never say. It was like, y'all know how to do it. You'll know how to do it. Just, what we want the queens to be. You know what they have been. Keep it going. He liked big mouth dogs. He liked them to open on track. When they treed, he wanted them to stay treed. Then they had to be smart. It was just.
And you boys will do that.
Got to be easy starting.
Yeah. And I'm sure you'll do that, won't you?
Yes.
Yes, sir. We can keep it going.
How was it once he learned that he had cancer? How did he take it?
He called me the day that he found out, and he didn't tell me. He just told me to come to his house over the weekend. So, he said, come up. I put aside whatever and come up. And he told me that Friday night after I got there. And I knew it was real serious because we didn't go hunting that Friday night. Mm-hmm. And he told me all what was going on. He said, I don't feel like I can hunt tonight. So we just talked most of the night, and he was just tired.
Yeah.
And he went down quick, but his mind stayed sharp. Yeah. He lasted about 2 months, right there around 2 months, 3 months. His mind was real sharp the whole time. He said, what person could have it better than this at all? And he had so much company come to visit him them last 2 months. He said, I got it made, no pain, not suffering. I'm ready to go. I know where I'm going.
That's awesome.
He said, I'm ready for it. And had all this company, all my friends come see me, come visit.
What an attitude.
He appreciated everybody.
He said nobody could have had it any better. And at the funeral, that was one of the things he wanted said, was to thank everybody. Thank everybody that had been part of the Skuna River legacy, the people that had bought puppies, had bought dogs from him, that had helped him in every way, his friends, his family, everybody stood behind him through all the years. He wanted that thank you to get out there to everybody. He's over and over, he told me that. He said, you always tell everybody that I appreciate what they did, for me and help me.
Well, Wimp, by the means of this podcast, Ricky and Mark and I, we know you're in a better place. We know there's no pain where you are. There's no crying. There's no mourning. There's only joy. And I know if dogs go to heaven, I know there's a lot of queens surrounding you up there. I can't say that that's scriptural. I don't know, but I sure hope so. And especially for guys like Wimp Aron. But he was set the bar really high for all of us. And some of you who've got several years left, like you guys do, I just know that he'll just continue to inspire you as you go forward with these dogs. What's the best dog you got right now in your kennel that y'all like the best?
Well, I'm partial to
the last winter.
Yeah, I like different stuffs about each one. We got several nice dogs right now.
Okay.
Lucky to have several right now.
Was there one there that he really kind of really liked that you got right now that's coming on or something?
I think, the 15, he called her Quick. He really liked her.
Yeah.
and 16 too, but he called her Bama.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
He really liked them. And he really liked Skuna, the young male dog we have. He was real high on him.
Yeah.
Had high hopes for him.
And all those years, he kind of reminds me a little bit of my friend Randy Smith up in Pennsylvania that likes to hunt the females, and has rarely run a stud dog. And I think Wimp told me that Bark and Lipper were the only two stud dogs I think that he promoted over the years. Was it maybe he had that favorite dog or
Yeah, he had a favorite a long time ago. Sold him to Richard Owens.
Yeah.
Richard ran him a long time as $Silver favorite.
Yeah. But he liked those females. Are y'all the same? Do you rather prefer to hunt females?
I would prefer to hunt them myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of like the females. I like a good one, but I like a good male dog, but I like hunting them females.
Yeah. Well, they're just kind of easier, aren't they? They're easier trained. They usually start earlier, I think, or my experience has been with them. Maybe a whole lot less aggravation at times, except that coming in heat, And that's...
Wimp always said that male dog's always in heat.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. Well, fellas, I sure appreciate your time today. And we've been at it about 45 minutes here. It seems like that's gotten away awfully quick.
Awful quick.
Was there anything that you thought maybe I'd ask you or something that's on your mind or on your heart that you'd like to say before we shut this thing down?
We just lost a legend. I mean, that's about all I can say. He was kind of larger than life to me in a lot of ways. And, he was my hunting partner. He's the only person I really ever hunted with my whole life. So he was my hunting buddy, day in, day out, week after week, up till October, I think, was the last hunting trip. It was November, I guess, the last hunting trip we made. Yeah.
Well, he mentioned hunting the Delta National Forest during hunting season or so. How far is that away from y'all there, or from where he lived?
3.5 hours.
Is it?
Mark, ain't that right? From Pontotoc.
Yeah. It's 3 hours from my house and 3 hours from his house.
I see.
To the Delta.
Well, listen, these questions keep coming, and I don't want to keep you guys all night, but did he have a favorite hunting spot that he liked to go more than anywhere else?
He had, spots that he hunted regular that he wouldn't kill the coons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But during kill season, he liked to get away from them spots and hunt. So I don't ever know of just a favorite spot. Do you, Ricky?
I don't. When he was hunting puppies, he always liked to hunt what he called the old home place, and it was where he grew up at. And he had protected coons. Don't know that he had ever killed a coon in there that had lived in those woods. Mm-hmm. And we were talking today, me and some of the other hunters there was talking about how many generations of coons that live in that rooms. He had a feeder there where he started pups, and then right down the road from that, he had a place called the Snake Feeder, and then he had a place called the Bottom Feeder, and that was where he did his puppy starting in the spring. And that he'd always tell you that was his favorite time. He liked that spring, getting those pups out there and seeing them come along, getting them to the bean field races and that kind of stuff. He really enjoyed that.
Yeah. He really liked starting pups.
That's right. He loved
He loved it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. That's great. I really always enjoyed that too. A lot of guys say, "Oh, I don't have time to fool with a pup. I don't want to fool with a crazy pup." But it's fun to me just watching them develop, and all that.
Yeah. Steve, you talk about them funny stories. Yeah. He protected them coons around his home place there. But one time, my oldest son was probably 11 or 12, and we was up there, and he was itching to shoot a coon. Mr. Wimp told him, said, "There's a litter of kittens over here." Said, "If eight dogs tree one over there, I'm going to let you shoot it out." So we go over there and sure enough tree a coon and go in there and get ready, and Levi props up and will shoot the coon. He shot one shot. coon fell out and the dogs are fighting it. And it went on there till the fight's about over. And another coon fell out of that tree.
Oh, hit two with one shot.
Wimp told him, said, 2 with 1 shot. Mr. Wimp said, you go put that gun up. You're not shooting no more of my coons out.
You're too good,
Got 2
boy.
in 1 shot.
How about that?
Every time he would see Levi from then on, he'd ask him about shooting them 2 coons with 1 shot.
Oh, he really loved kids, didn't he? He really loved
He loved the kids. He really enjoyed the kids being around.
Yeah, his highlight of the year was our youth hunt we had in September. That was his highlight. He loved that.
Oh, that's great. Well, you know, as we get older, you do appreciate the young people so much more. And, you know, as a younger man, I was going through life, you know, fighting fire. But you slow down. Age makes you slow down, but then you start thinking more, you know, and you think about what's important. And to have young people to hunt with is a real blessing. I have a couple of partners in my dogs now. One of them is no kid. He's in his 50s, like about Mark's age, and his name is Mark. And then I have a younger man, 29, up in Virginia, and he and I have a dog together. And without those guys, I really probably would just quit. I mean, coon hunting's not good down here in Florida where I am. It's really hard to find a decent place to hunt. I say I'd quit. I don't think I could quit. I worked all those years, and here I am still doing this podcasting thing. And sometimes I wonder why I even do that. But I know why. I know the answer is because I get to meet and talk to guys like you and remember, you know, the stories and all the things that go along with it. Coon hunting's been good to me. It's been my life. It was actually a livelihood for me, and not many people can say that. And I'm very thankful for that. And I know you boys enjoy it too. And I hope that you can enjoy it for many, many years to come.
Thanks, sir.
90 years will get here before you know it, if you live to be as old as Mr. Aron. And my dad told me when you get to be 50, Steve, those years are going to fly. So, and I can attest to that.
They do pick up.
Well, fellas, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate so much you coming. I think it's fitting that we recorded this on the day of Winston Aron's funeral, and to hold his memory in our hearts, we'll do that forever. And I know you boys much more than me because you knew him so much more intimately than I did. But he was a great man. I don't know what else we could say about him, but if you have anything else to say, let's do it now, and then we'll push this button and send this out.
I just want to say I appreciate you, Steve. You know, the articles, the podcast, that kind of stuff. Wimp really enjoyed that. That was a true, you know, them bad rainy nights or something. He'd sit there and he would read your articles, and he'd tell me, you know, Steve wrote about this red bone or wrote about this. He didn't read them because it was a walker dog. He enjoyed the articles.
Yeah.
And that meant a lot.
That's such a blessing to me, Mark.
I can attest to that too. I've seen him just sit and read them for, you know, on the bad nights.
I'd just love to be down there on those old bad rainy nights and sit there with him and talk. Man alive, we'd probably never get to sleep.
Oh, he might go back and get the 1978 books and go through the whole year and, you know, sit there all night because he went to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. So if it was bad, he stayed up and read or whatever till that 4 o'clock in the morning. He didn't go to bed because it wasn't able to coon out there.
Well, I guess he
had that same routine.
Yeah, a little bit like Frank Giddings up there in Michigan, hunted every night. And so, you know, with working and all down through the years, I was never fortunate enough to do that. But I do enjoy when we go to the White River and we get to just hunt as long as we want. We'd come in a lot earlier, and we'd like to admit most nights. But
and he had been retired for 35 years. So, you know, he got a lot of
God was good to him. And he
That's
recognized
exactly
it,
right.
didn't he? He did.
He did. He really did.
Well, okay, friends, that's going to conclude our tribute to one of the greatest coon hunters that our sport's ever known. His memory will never pass away because everybody that met Wimp Aron was left with a tremendous impression of a good man, an honest man, as Ricky said, a man that loved hounds, he loved people, he loved the youth, he loved the sport, and he wanted to see it go forward. And in his honor, that's what we're going to do. Thank you, fellas. I really appreciate you coming on with me.
Yes,
I
sir.
hope that in the days to come, I know you're going to miss your friend very much, but our prayers will be with you and with his family. And well, I hope to see you all. I'll be in the state of Mississippi here in not too many days, about a couple of weeks for the UKC Winter Classic. I hope to see you there.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
that's great. Well, folks, that's going to wrap it up for Gone to the Dogs for this week. If anybody asks you where's Steve Fielder, tell him, well, that old coon hunter, I don't know where he is, but he's gone to the dogs. I know that much.